Entrepreneurship can be a lonely journey. If you share your biggest wins and your biggest successes, it might come across as arrogance. But if you share your biggest losses and your biggest defeat and all of your stress, it might really overwhelm those who are close to you. That's why it's so critically important to be part of a community of entrepreneurs who can support each other through all of this.
A very safe and conducive place for founders, entrepreneurs and investors to come together. There's no pressure.
And I think with the amount of negativity that we come our way every single day, it's so amazing to be surrounded by positive people and their mindset.
And I felt that people always listened to what anyone had to say. There was no one that was right, no one that was more important.
It's a sense of like-minded individuals coming together, essentially to learn from.
To connect with everyday people, but people that has a willingness to succeed in life.
To network with other businesses and feel inspired for change of the future.
And ultimately create a space to add more value to network partners and individuals that are attending the events.
That's why we created something like Founders Events that can be one or more ecosystem events for entrepreneurs and founders where you can connect, learn, be inspired and grow together.
The idea around a group of people that not just want to make an impact, but can make an impact, more importantly, coming together is very exciting.
That have a common interest and a common goal to grow their business, to learn from one another, to bring employment and economic growth to South Africa.
Taking into account where South Africa is right now, that is critical. We all have a lot of work to do, and the SME segment and entrepreneurs, essentially this is where we can make a difference.
We kicked the year off with FundRaise Con, an event that's focused on everything fundraising for entrepreneurs. By the middle of the year, we host Scale Up Con, that's focused on everything scale-up methodology for business owners. And by the end of the year in Global Entrepreneurship Week, we host our flagship event, Cape Town Founders Conference. We hope to see you guys at all of those.
Hello everyone, I hope you guys can hear me just fine. My name is Lo Barnard, I'm one of the co-founders of Outsourced CFO, and I'll be your host this evening. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome all of you to the very first FundRaise Con in 2020 in these absolutely crazy times. So firstly, you guys might be thinking that, wow, this doesn't look like a production quality studio, and Lo looks a little bit more tired than he normally does. So the reason for this is just I'm at the moment in Christian Barnard Hospital, just in a little kind of waiting room next to the neonatal ICU. Our little baby was born about 2 weeks ago, and he was 12 weeks early. So my wife and I have really been tied to the neonatal ICU here, and I'm also going to be sitting here tonight speaking to you guys just because prior to the session and afterwards I just need to go check in on the little man. Yeah, so the last 2 years we've been having Cape Town Founders Conferences that have gotten bigger and bigger as we've gone. And we found that it's such an important thing to bring the community of entrepreneurs and investors and business people and professionals in Cape Town together to just have conversations about things that are really important to business. And off the back of the success of those two Cape Town Founders Conferences that we've held, we decided going into this year that we want to make a big effort on these events, and we decided to add an extra couple of big ones to the agenda. So, tonight we're sitting in one of the first ones of those called FundRaise Con. So the idea of this session was to bring the investment community and entrepreneur community and some professionals together to just have a proper talk through everything fundraising related with regards to entrepreneurs. Obviously, the coronavirus then hit, which cancelled most of the events for the next 3 to 6 months. So very interestingly, we just decided, we're not going to just cancel the event. We've decided what we want to do is just pivot and take it digital, make it free, make it accessible to more investors, entrepreneurs, and professionals, which we have done. I just want to say a big thank you to the Outsourced CFO marketing and tech teams who have done an absolute stellar job to put this thing together in such short time. And please also bear with us tonight. This is an experiment. It's the first time that we're doing this. We've got really cool speakers from kind of live streaming in from different places with different technology tools. So it might not be completely smooth sailing, but we will keep improving as we go for the next events. And I'm confident that tonight will be a massive learning experience for everyone And it's great just to, in this time of isolation, just to get everyone together, to get so many entrepreneurs and business people together. Guys, just pull up the figures for the night. So we're super excited to have this amount of people all joining us for the session. I think the president would have classified this as an illegal gathering. So we're really happy to be able to do it all kind of via live stream, so that everyone can Skype in from the comfort of their homes. We would have loved to feed you guys and give you a drink, but I hope everyone has their supper ready, and I hope everyone's got a drink for the evening to enjoy it with us. So just a little bit about the agenda for the night before we jump in. So firstly, I'm super excited about the people we've been able to put together. So everyone who's going to speak tonight are going to speak from a place of deep personal experience about their journey within the fundraising landscape, whether it is a professional or an investor or an entrepreneur. Everyone who's speaking tonight are there because they've really, they're really at the top of their game, and they have learned a lot of lessons that could be very valuable for our community. So we're stoked to hear them speak. So firstly, I've asked my co-founder Donna Pretorius, who is the lead on fundraising at Outsourced CFO, just tell you guys a little bit about the journey we've been on over the last 7 odd years with fundraising in the entrepreneurial landscape. We're calling this session our journey to 1 billion rand, which is very close to the amount of money that has flowed through the office in the last couple of years, with our entrepreneurs all the time raising capital from different types of investors that Donna will be telling you guys a lot more about. Then we've asked Joshua Romisher, the new CEO from Launch Lab, which is Stellenbosch University's tech incubator out in studies. And Josh is American born, and he has got a lot of global experience. And we've asked him he's recently moved his whole family, including his little son, Jackson, over to South Africa to just plant their base here. And from the side of things, they want to do it for the long term. And we've just asked him for his, coming in as an international citizen in South Africa, like what is his take on the funding landscape for entrepreneurs in South Africa, because it is quite a unique space. So we're getting that external perspective from him after Donna. And then we've asked our first entrepreneur, Bordo, is going to be doing a chat with us about their journey as the co-founders of Tag Marshall, a really exciting golfing tech company that I'll tell you a lot about. The guys have raised multiple consecutive rounds from local and international investors, and they've got operations not only in South Africa but also big operations in the US, some in the UK, and they've also got some business in Australia. So really a South African-born company that has gone global after consecutive raises, and they're still only in acceleration phase. So we're really keen to just hear what the man has to say. After that, we've asked the ladies from Caveat Legal to give us a bit of input on their take on term sheets, because once a deal's on the table, there's so many things to consider in terms of how the term sheet would actually work. So one of our professionals, our head of CFO advisory at Outsourced CFO, Wais Asmal, is going to be doing an interview with Sarah van Sale from Caveat Legal, just about what do entrepreneurs need to look out for when they're dealing with this really important first kind of legal document in the fundraising process, which can be exceptionally valuable. Then we're jumping back to the entrepreneurs. We're talking to Avril van der Rede. He's the founder of Eagle Towers, and they've had an incredible journey over the last couple of years with raising also consecutive rounds of local finance, which has been quite an incredible growth journey. So we've asked him to share some of his war stories in the process of growing his business and raising capital, managing all of that complexity throughout. And then we want to get to our investors. We've got a very exciting investors panel. We've asked 2 of the biggest venture capital names in South Africa to have a chat with us. Manuel Kozer from Silvertree Holdings is going to be on the panel, as well as Ian Lessam from Havik, that you guys would have read and heard a lot from these 2 gentlemen. They are 2 of the big spokespersons for the venture capital community in South Africa. They've also both increased their funds and are looking to plow additional investment into the South African landscape in the next while. So Leanne from our cloud accounting team is going to be interviewing these 2 gentlemen to just get their thoughts on what are investors really looking for when they're heading into deals. What can entrepreneurs do to prep for that, and how do investors think? So it'll give us some really good insights in terms of all of that. And yeah, that is what we've got for you guys this evening. We hope it's going to be an absolute blast and that you enjoy every second of it. We should be wrapped up in about an hour and a half in total if everyone sticks to their times nicely, which we'll try and do. But yeah, I hope it's really insightful. Then just, if you guys want to engage, we'd love to have comments and input and questions from you guys all the time. There might be questions for the speakers or specific comments. For the purposes of tonight, we decided, look, it's going to be too complex to have so many people from all over the country and all over the world who are streaming in to speak to the different individual speakers. We haven't quite got the platform there yet. For the next event, we'll probably be there. For now, we'll create the platform for you guys. So afterwards, just give us those questions and comments and input, and we'll put all of that together and share it with the community and make sure your questions get answered by the right experts in their field. Then just to our sponsors, I just want to say a massive thank you. This event 2 weeks ago, this event was still going to be at a big location with people coming together all in person, with our two key sponsors being Xero and Receipt Bank on board. And we said, look guys, we can't do this in person anymore, we have to go digital, and the guys have backed us all of the way. So to Xero and Receipt Bank, you guys, thank you very much. You are both two of our absolute pivotal cloud tools that we as Outsourced CFO, as well as all of our entrepreneurs, use to run their companies remotely. It's been such a breeze for us to go completely remote because all of our tools are already in the cloud. And tech platforms like Xero and like Receipt Bank really help business owners and accountants from all over the world to do their work from anywhere in the world. So remote doesn't matter so much. So just to both of you guys, thank you so much for your support and for your love in this time. We're going to keep building this community, even if we can't see each other face to face. And then just to our speakers, a big word of thanks. Thank you guys for sharing your expertise, for stepping up to the plate to talk to our community and to share those critical lessons that otherwise each of us would have to go and relearn on our own. So I just want to say, yeah, thank you to you. And then lastly, just to this community who have come together. We're not with each other in person tonight, but we are, we're with each other in spirit. We can all still do this thing, get the learnings, build the community, and just spend some time together in what is really a challenging time of isolation and where business is in chaos and complexity. Just to band together as business owners and investors and professionals, we can see this time through with the support of each other. So thank you very much for being here. We hope to stay connected with you all throughout this process. We will have our next event in about 3 months again, and all in between we'll definitely be connecting with everyone as we go. So have a fun night. I'll speak to you guys as we go.
Good day everyone. My name is Dana Pretorius and I'm one of the co-founders of Outsourced CFO. Today I'll be taking you through Outsourced CFO journey to raise 1 billion Rand in funding for our clients. I'll be sharing my screen and taking you through a presentation. So it all started for Outsourced CFO in the year 2014, from really true humble beginnings where we started out. The year 2014 was the first year that Outsourced CFO operated. We had no clients, no networks, and really an unproven business model. But the one thing that we did have was a sincere passion for entrepreneurs. In that year, we've raised our first transactions for our clients, just under 7 million Rand in funding. And some experiences and learnings that we've gathered from that first year was the first client that I've helped raise funding for was in the digital textile printing space. I had to spend a lot of time with an entrepreneur to really understand their business, bring in their actual business performance and incorporating the expansion opportunity. A big learning for me here was to really have a close relationship with the investors to make sure that you conclude the transactions and to really build your financial model flexible as the expansion opportunity can change while working on the fundraising drive. A great highlight in memory for me was that year 2014 was the first year that Outsourced CFO started. There to the left you can see myself and Lo. We've enrolled at the Bandwidth Barn for the Velocity Incubation Program. when we started out, we only had 2 free desk spaces that we used for that. We knew we had to get our name, our brand, and our offering out there in the market to really help entrepreneurs succeed. So what we did a lot of workshops at the Bandwidth Bond for free to really make sure that we can help these entrepreneurs with navigating financial decision making in their businesses, as well as the fundraising journey for their businesses. Our second year in operations, the year of 2015, a very important theme for our team was sharpening the axe. As yourself know, as entrepreneurs and investors, you always have to sharpen your set of skill sets to be relevant in the market that you operate in. That specific year, we've been super privileged to be part of the Microsoft BizSpark program. We had the opportunity to mentor various entrepreneurs in the tech space, helping them with their financial models, their fundraising drive, as well as just understanding important financial decisions that they had to take in their businesses. In that year, our clients raised just under 23 million Rand in funding, bringing the cumulative fundraise for clients just under 30 million. A memory highlight for the second year of operations was that Outsourced CFO really tried to put ourselves on the map. We focused a lot on our brand, on market awareness of what CFOs, chartered accountants can bring to the entrepreneurial space and ecosystem. And as you can see there to the right, we did a lot of multiple workshops for entrepreneurs during that time, with very fond memories. In the third year of operations, the important theme for that year was really building a strong network of partners in this ecosystem and learning from them, and learning as we go and sharing that learning as entrepreneurs in this space. In year 3, an interesting story here would be one of my clients in the electric vehicle manufacturing industry. Interesting how I met them and helped them raising funding from the IRC. I saw this specific client pitching at the entrepreneurial event, and I was super impressed with the opportunity that they had. After the entrepreneur pitched, I approached them and asked them how Outsourced CFO could possibly assist them with their fundraising journey. We ended up working with this entrepreneur, working closely with the IRC, helping them to raise funding, enabling them to manufacture multiple electrical vehicles in South Africa and abroad. An important lesson learned here was it's super important to incorporate investors with your discussions early on. Ask their advice. Ask them what's the best way to approach it. What synergies do they see in your business, and to really make sure that you speak that investor jargon and position your transactions and to be as attractive for the investors as possible could be. During that year, our clients just raised under 30 million Rand in fundings, bringing the total cumulative fundraise for that year just under 60 million. A memory, a highlight for that third year in operations for Outsourced CFO was the big shift for Outsourced CFO, moving from the Bandwidth Bond to our own offices, currently located at 33 Church Street, with a team size of 11 already at that stage. And then obviously we're so grateful and thankful for winning the Western Cape Government Peer Award for the 2nd position in the emerging business category. In year 4, the important theme for year 4 in the year of 2017 was be cautious of shining objects. I know as entrepreneurs and as investors, there can be so many other avenues that you can explore as a business, which could potentially derail you from what you need to focus on. During the year of 2017, we've had an amazing opportunity to get involved with the Section 12J venture capital company, where we were part of the management team that selected transactions, helped screen transactions, as well as on the investment committee, helping select entrepreneurs' transactions to invest in. So we had that amazing experience to be part of the other side of the table where money was actually deployed into entrepreneurs. Important lesson here for us would have been that the timing for that opportunity wasn't necessarily ideal for Outsourced at that time. Outsourced in itself had to focus on servicing their clients at that stage. Important lesson is just to be cautious of shining objects in your business and your ecosystem as well. But through that process, we're not looking back. We've gained so much experience due to that process. That specific year, year 4, in the year 2017, our clients have raised just under 240 million rand in funding, bringing our cumulative fundraise just under 300 million. Memory for that year was, we're so thankful for the launching of the CIPA training office at Outsourced. CIPA standing for South African Institute of Professional Accountants. It's basically a 3-year traineeship where we've helped young professionals to do their articles and gain exposure in helping clients with their accounting and tax needs in summary. The 5th year of Outsourced's operation is the big highlight, the big theme is the Finance Readiness Program. Now, the Finance Readiness Program is a program that, in partnership with Investec CSI, we've piloted a Finance Readiness Program. Investec CSI really have a heart for entrepreneurship, and they're doing a lot in this space, and we truly have values aligned with them to really make this an amazing program. In short, what this program entails is we took 10 entrepreneurs through a 6-month accelerator, really helping these entrepreneurs to be funding ready. There's a lot of funding out there. You have a lot of entrepreneurs that require funding to grow optimally, but there's a mismatch of entrepreneurs and funders. And because investors feel that entrepreneurs aren't funding ready. So during the 6-month accelerator, we got to get these entrepreneurs funding ready from a compliance point of view, from having the right financial models in place, from a valuation point of view, a due diligence point of view, a pitch decks point of view. And this Finance Readiness Program then gets concluded with an investor roundtable event where entrepreneurs pitch for funding at an investor roundtable event. A lot of lessons learned here would include that there is something like fundraising fatigue. As entrepreneurs, make sure you are surrounded by an environment of support to help you through this process. Not lose energy during the end of this process, because there's a lot of lost due diligence processes at the end of raising funding that you need to have a lot of energy to see through. Perfect. During this year of the 5th year of operations, 2018, the funds raised during that year was just under 385 million. One of my clients in the educational platform space was very fortunate enough to raise funding from Australian listed entity that obviously influenced that amount of funds raised. It also brought the cumulative funds raised by our clients to just under 685 million. Big highlight and memory for me for the year of 2018 would obviously be this investor roundtable event at Investec's offices, where we had more than R1 billion in funding there at the day with investors there and seeing some of those transactions through. Year 6, the year of 2019, important theme for that year would be Market Access Program. The Market Access Program is another program that we are piloting with Investec CSI. We're working with 8 entrepreneurs over a 6-month journey to really improve their sales processes and their marketing position, and really helping them to position themselves to get more sales and increase sales. The best type of funding is happy paying clients, and that's truly the heart behind this program. Again, amazing partnership with Investec CSI that really have a heart for entrepreneurs in South Africa. this year, the 6th year, the funds raised for by our clients was just under 65 million, bringing the cumulative funds raised by our clients to just under 750 million. A great memory during this year would be the highlights of the Investing Finance Readiness Program over the last 2 years. To the right, you can see all the red circles shows the different type of funding raised during the two previous programs. We've helped to close just under 30 million rand in deals won for entrepreneurs, with over 20 million rand deals still being concluded for the entrepreneurs. The year of 2019 was also the year that Outsourced CFO was accredited as a SICA training office and using financial management as elective and not auditing, which means that we can also train future CAs to help stimulate this fundraising ecosystem in South Africa. So what does 2020 and the future entail for Outsourced CFO? So for the year 2020 and beyond, Outsourced CFO's big aim and target is to help raise our clients 1 billion rand over the next 2 years. We want to do that by extending an open invitation to investors to engage with us. We'd be so interested to understand your mandates and know the ideal investments that you want to receive. That will enable us to refer investors to you. We also want to invite entrepreneurs to engage with us with our fundraising services. We've got an amazing funding gap analysis first engagement that we do with clients, really carving out their fundraising journey for them. In conclusion, Outsourced CFO purpose is to be a financial catalyst for growth. We're doing this by enabling ambitious SMEs to scale and grow optimally and really be funding ready. By growing SMEs, they contribute to the job employment in South Africa, which results in increase to a number of economic active participants in South Africa. We want to thank you all for listening to this presentation, and we want to encourage you as entrepreneurs and investors. Keep striving and keep growing this amazing ecosystem that we have. We've got a lot of responsibilities on our hands to help create job employment and stimulate our economy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joshua Ramesher. I am the CEO of Stellenbosch University Launch Lab. We're an incubator affiliated with the university here, based out of Stellenbosch, South Africa. Our mission is to transform seemingly impossible into world-shaping companies. So we work primarily with the university as well as a local ecosystem to turn intellectual property, research, even companies from the local ecosystem into products, companies, commercial viability, things that may reach the world at large. I think of us as existing as upstream in the entrepreneurial ecosystem as possible. We literally are taking something that is seemingly impossible and within 12 to 24 months trying to turn that into a company that then can seek external funding, can find corporate partnerships, can scale outside of South Africa. So that for us is focused on agriculture, ag tech. Could be things like medical, food science, things the university is very strong at. For me, my background actually is in clean energy. I've been working and helping build primarily 2 companies across sub-Saharan Africa over the last 7 years. Before that, I was in investment banking in the United States for 11 or 12 years and have been a serial entrepreneur, 6 different experiences in my background. And part of coming to an incubator now is trying to help other people make creative mistakes. My whole vision is to play a material role in helping 10, 15, 20 companies reach scale across Africa, solving social problems with private sector solutions. I'm here today to talk a little bit about an external perspective on funding in South Africa. I feel like I have a very unique perspective. I grew up on Wall Street in New York and San Francisco in debt capital markets, primarily in structured products. So mortgages, asset-backed securities, CDOs, CLOs, everything that came out of the financial crisis and the like, I was part of during that time. And that gave me a very unique understanding of how capital markets work. The mortgage market in the United States is the most liquid and largest market in the world. So understanding how those mechanisms work. I've then been VP of corporate finance at a startup called Zola Electric. That was a clean energy company across sub-Saharan Africa. I ran all of our corporate fundraising, all of our partnerships, our business development for a few years there as we went from 1 country to 4. Was able to help the company raise something like over 125 million USD across joint ventures, equity, debt, convertibles, anything you can imagine. We raised capital in that manner. I then spent the last couple of years at a company called Phoenix International, which was a solar home system company operating out of Kampala, Uganda. We were acquired by Engie, the French utility, a couple of years ago. So I went through the acquisition. Actually saw funding from now the inside out. So working with a large corporate in order to fund Pan-African business, and that business scaled in a massive way. The company invested over 150 million USD in Phoenix, and went from 1 market to 6 and had over 500,000 customers. I've now been in South Africa for 6 months, helping build LaunchLab as an incubator, helping connect our entrepreneurs with the funding universe, helping to serve as that middle person in terms of connecting our startups with entrepreneurs, as well as investors and corporates. So I still am getting my feet under me in terms of how the SA landscape looks and works. But I would like to offer a few insights from how South Africa compares to sub-Saharan Africa and then Europe and the US. And I would say that the majority of funding that we raised for the companies in sub-Saharan Africa did come from Europe and the United States, and that candidly South Africa was not a market that we ever looked at for our products. We were doing mostly rural off-grid solar. South Africa was not a target market, so I am uniquely able to say that I understand sub-Saharan Africa pretty well, but South Africa has been a whole new learning experience for me. So I just want to touch on a few of the questions that have been asked, and hopefully be able to shed some light on what you're going through in terms of funding and thinking about how to operate your company. One of the questions was, do you see tech commercialization contributing to the South African economy over the next few years? My answer is it has to. Only something like 2% of global R&D ever becomes commercial. So there's billions and billions of dollars every year spent in research and development at universities, that 98% of that never reaches the world. Here at Stellenbosch University, we're doing incredible things around deep tech, blockchain, food science, engineering, medical. A lot of these things are research projects. A lot of them may never reach commercial viability, might not ever be companies, but at the same time, we owe it to the world to try to turn some of these ideas from research into commercial opportunities. I feel that my take on South Africa so far, and it's a respectful comment, is that South Africa used to be a bit of a country in Africa. Now it's becoming more of an African country. As we see things like Eskom and load shedding, as we see the government and fiscal situation, these are common situations all across Africa. There's not enough revenue to operate the government. There are no, service delivery is very poor. And what that's led to in other parts of Africa, like Kenya, like Nigeria, Uganda, is the fact that the private sector has stepped in. The private sector has said the public sector is not going to provide clean water, they're not going to provide sanitation, they're not going to provide energy. Therefore, there must be private sector solutions. In South Africa, we have these incredible universities, like nothing I've ever seen across Africa, and rivaling anything in Europe or US. If we are smart about how we want to do our R&D, about how we want to commercialize, we have to rely on these universities to be the core of our startup entrepreneurial landscape. There's too many good people. There's too many great ideas. This is a knowledge region. And if you look at knowledge regions across the world using Silicon Valley as an analog, generally there is a very top quality university in the middle of all that. So I do believe that working as an incubator tied to a university with incredibly smart people, with funding, with the overall entrepreneurial landscape that's necessary to grow companies is critical to success. So when I look at LaunchLab, I want to be able to say in a couple of years that Stellenbosch is Africa's leading go-to destination for things like ag tech, for things like food science, for things like deep tech and satellites. And there's no reason that it cannot be. So I'm very, very bullish on the opportunity to turn research and development at universities into commercial opportunities. One of the next questions was, coming into South Africa as an American, what's your view on the funding landscape? I will say I've only been here for 6 months, but a lot of my job and my work is to talk to people, entrepreneurs, investors, and the like, and understand that dynamic. It's also my background and also one of my value adds. My candid view is that the South African funding landscape is very small and very difficult. It is very much a closed ecosystem. There's much less development finance down here. I think because South Africa is considered a middle-income country, groups like, say, OPIC or USAID or EIB or AFDB are not as present here as where they are present in the rest of Africa. I also feel like there was a much more of a close linkage in sub-Saharan Africa, especially Kenya and Nigeria, to Europe and the United States in terms of funding. My experience thus far in South Africa is that there's a limited number of funders, both angel, venture capital, private equity. They're primarily South African. They're primarily looking at South African companies, and it feels like a very insulated environment. It does feel like there's much more demand for capital than there is supply of capital. It feels like the opportunity for risk capital, especially early, seed, Series A, is very low, that a lot of the investors, even if they are Series A investors, are effectively looking for almost private equity type cash flows and returns. I will say that I think the model of trying to take Silicon Valley and bring it to Africa does not work. Companies cannot exist by having very negative cash flow from operations and trying to fill that in with cash flow from financing for years, the same way that Silicon Valley does that. It's harder to build companies in Africa. You have to build the rails, you have to have the logistics, things do take longer. So I do feel like what's happening in South Africa, I can't complain about it. If I was an investor, I think I'd want to see better cash flows. I'd want to see a de-risking. I'd want to see a pathway to liquidity. I don't think that exists as much in sub-Saharan Africa because there is more funding. But there's a great Warren Buffett saying that you don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. And with the global recession that we're in right now and going to be very deep into for the next couple of months or years, we're going to find who has business models that can sustain themselves and can attract external investment. The tide is going out very quickly. So I think the upside of that is that in South Africa, you have to be able to build a real company. There isn't funding to potentially just enable bad behavior to say, okay, it's Series A and Series B. I don't really know how I'm going to monetize this. I don't really know how I'm going to make this a viable business. I'll figure that out later. I'll just continue to fund myself with venture capital or whatever else for years. And that does exist in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think it dilutes the market. I don't think it's good for the market. So I actually think that what investors are asking for in South Africa is not a bad thing. We just need more capital. So our job at Stellenbosch University Launch Lab is to create viable businesses. When businesses leave the incubator, I would love for them to say they don't need external funding. They can self-fund, they can bootstrap, they have a business model that works, they have revenue. I do believe that if you're going to take external capital, the first dollar of capital that you take needs to be growth equity. It can't be product market fit. It can't be still trying to figure out what unit economics look like. External capital in South Africa should be growth equity. If we're doing anything different than that, I think you're going to find negative outcomes. So I really believe that we need to expand the solution set in terms of viable capital sources, but we also need to frankly build companies that are fundable. I think entrepreneurs need to understand how investors work, and I think investors need to understand how entrepreneurs are really trying very hard to build businesses in what is a very tough environment. So I think I'm hopeful that at SU Launch Lab, we can connect our South African companies to the world a bit more to increase the solution set of funding. At the same time, we're making a very concerted effort to create real businesses that have positive cash flow from operations that can be sustainable without external funding. The last question here is, tell us a bit more about University Technology Fund, which is a fund coming out of SASME, and the role you will play with that in terms of tech transfer. So the SASME has done an incredible job, I think, of really seeding early stage risk capital in South Africa. The University Technology Fund is a 155 million Rand fund that is hoping to grow to 300 to 500 million before closing next year. Its sole mandate is to invest in technology transfer coming out of universities. It's huge for the industry. A lot of the things we work on here, as I said, they're seemingly impossible. They're very incredible ideas that have longer incubation periods. This isn't software coming out of Silicon Valley that can be sold to Google within 6 months. These are products, services, hardware, software that takes time to develop. So we do need to think about the world a bit differently in terms of our funding. The UTF, run by Stocks and Strauss, I think is going to be an incredible vehicle to both provide early stage grant capital for new ideas, as well as provide that almost valley of death type capital that will get companies from pilot to something that can attract external funding. So I look at the UTF as a critical factor in creating a viable ecosystem to bring commercial viability out of universities. Working very, very closely with SASME, with Stocks and Strauss, with the UTF, in order to create pipeline, in order to create viable companies that have great data rooms, that really understand their financial viability. And I look at us again as taking something from 0 to 1. We're going from seemingly impossible to a company. If we do our job well, that company then gets passed along to UTF. I do think we need to have other potential investors. That could be corporates, that could be companies, investors outside of Africa, in Europe and the United States, who could also invest in these companies. But if nothing else, we now have a key link in the value chain to say something can come out of the university, it can go to Launch Lab, it can go through the UTF, and hopefully by the time it comes out of the UTF, it's either commercially viable and self-fundable or self-sustaining, or it can access additional capital from external partners in the US, Europe, Africa, wherever that may be. So in closing, I think we really need to concentrate on building private sector businesses in South Africa that are tackling public sector deficiencies. That's going to continue over the next 5 and 10 years. That presents a massive opportunity. At the same time, we really have to be cognizant about how we are bringing technology out of these universities. How are we commercializing that? How are we creating viable business models? As load shedding happens now, we can see that there is a massive opportunity for the private sector to step up. At Stellenbosch University Launch Lab, we feel that opportunity is massive, and we want to be part of the proactive solution of creating excellent companies that can be scalable across South Africa and the world. So I thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions. I believe that the OCFO will be distributing our email addresses and our contact information. We're looking for great partners, great investors, great entrepreneurs to come help us transform seemingly impossible into world shaping. So thank you for your time.
Hello, I'm Bodo Sieber, CEO and co-founder of Tag Marshall. Thanks to Founders Events for having me. Very exciting, even though the format is a bit different than anticipated. Start local, scale global is my theme for the day, and I want to share a bit of our story, some expansion learnings as we've gone global, and obviously some funding lessons, which is why you're all here. A little bit about myself. I'm 41 years old. I've got 2 kids, which there's a high chance that you'll hear them running around the background. That's just a new normal. I'm a previous founder, having co-founded betterplace.org in Berlin. I'm a German national. And I've also founded another software business in Cape Town. And so Tag Marshall is my 4th business that I'm involved in. Let me take it away. So Tag Marshall is a B2B software as a service golf course optimization platform. So what we do is we optimize golf operations so that they run efficiently and that they get the most out of their asset by managing and controlling anything that happens out on the field, which is basically traffic management, if you will. And we use data analytics, we use IoT technology, and we use some AI to make that happen. And ultimately, the goal is to provide the best possible play experience and to optimize efficiency so that the operators can save money and obviously maximize revenue, which is exciting and interesting for any business. start local, scale global is something that we technically did, but in reality skipped quite a few steps on. And here's the reason. So our market, which is a very defined vertical, has got 34,000 courses globally. And as you can see, immediately half of those are in one country, which is the US. So to give an example, South Africa has got 550 clubs that we could target. Florida alone has got 1,400. So it's very obvious early on for us that if we wanted to create a real groundbreaking business, we needed to move away from this local market because it's simply not big enough. And if you think about it, that is something that unless you're designing and defining and innovating a solution for South Africa, for Africa specifically, where Africa is a big market in itself, that is a reality that you might be faced with. And also overseas and in the global context, it's just a massive business. I mean, $68 billion contributed to the US economy. Right now, that's obviously all taken a dip, but that's a reality we have to also deal with and be resilient about. And that is something that we are actively adding value to. Yeah, to give you an idea of how we've grown. So nothing is an overnight success. It started very humbly in 2014, where the concept was come up with. On a golf course, a problem that is very, very obvious one in the game is that it takes quite long to play, and often if it's not managed well, you have to wait, and that's very frustrating for players. And this is how my business partners saw that there was a gap in the market, and then contacted me and my good friend and business partner, because we were the tech guys, and said, is there not something that you guys can help us build here? So we partnered up, and in 2015 had a proof of concept ready that we introduced quite early on at the PGA show, just to test the waters, that's a big golf expo. And then we grew that, basically doubling year on year, or doing more than double in revenue over the years. And now we've got almost 300 clubs that optimize with our system. That is still a fraction of the global market, but it's certainly a real business at this stage. So what we do is we optimize the play experience, we control the field flow and the pace of play. Traffic management, as I said, we provide operational oversight with actionable data, which is in this space that is quite traditional to using IoT technology, and tech is quite innovative and quite different. Ultimately, the end game is to save costs and maximize revenue. And that we're doing really well, which is what explains why we've been able to grow so nicely. So at this point, we've tracked 10 million rounds of golf. We've got about 1 billion data points, which are exciting for us. For those of you who know the game, you're missing out on a lot this year, unfortunately. So Winged Foot, where the US Open is hosted, is one of our clubs. Then Le National last year, 2 years ago in France, where the Ryder Cup was hosted, one of our partners, Pebble Beach, you would have hopefully watched the US Open last year. So there's a lot of big name courses that are using our system successfully, but the majority of our courses, that middle of the road course and club, that makes up for the majority of play that happens. And obviously 80% of our revenue comes out of the US at this point. So we have, from solving a very single-minded problem in the game, which is to speed up the play and make it better in terms of management, we have evolved into a golf course optimization data platform, because data has been really powerful for us, and we have positioned ourselves successfully as a class and thought leader, and we are now a trusted industry partner, obviously a few years in. So you can see that here, Forbes has picked up on us, and if they say it has to be true, then we were at the USGA's, which is the United States Golf Association's Innovation Symposium, on stage with a few of our sort of data and research projects that we helped them with. And the European Tour, for instance, is one of our tech partners, just an example. So those are the things that that happen over time if you keep at it. This is our stand as it looks now at the PGA show, which is quite sizable. And obviously when we first got there, it was very tiny and insignificant, and we were very green, but that's the evolution of any business. Global expansion learnings. What have we learned? So right now we've got 3 setups. one is in Ireland, one is in Cape Town, and one is in Atlanta. And we're serving 10 countries out of that. Obviously, quite a few of those are within Europe, which we look at as one market, but it's also not one market, which I'll get to now. Then at this stage, Australia over here should be green because we're making some inroads there. South Africa, obviously, we've got a few clubs, but mostly in the US, and within that, there's a few hot pockets, and the East Coast is quite busy for us, and Florida as well. So that is our global expansion. Some of the learnings that I would urge you to heed as a bit of advice is every market's got its own picture where you need to find your first innovators and early adopters. And every market, no matter how well established you are in the previous market, will have that picture. And that goes down to city level and county level. In every single one, so if you're good to go in one state and you've got 20, 30 happy customers, you still need to go through that in another state and start it all over again. So what you need to learn from that is that momentum builds momentum. So it pays to stick with certain areas and certain hot pockets. Don't dilute your efforts and go out and chase every single customer. So there are a lot of markets that we have not accessed and that we have said no to because we realize that they're difficult to access, and the amount of effort it would take us to be successful, say in Japan or elsewhere, with cultural barriers, language barriers, and so on, would take us away from really growing in a market that we already have momentum. And the other lesson that's very important is you need to find and value those innovators and early adopters. So you don't go for the people who will form part of the late majority because they are not going to go with your solution, no matter how good your presentation is, or no matter how much sense it makes to you, and maybe even to them, they just won't. So find those early adopters and find those innovators and see them through and make them happy. And that takes 3 years. And then only then will you see that curve ticking up. And it's, as I said, it's the same. So if we this season opening up a new market, Germany, for instance, we need to find our first early adopters in that space. And they're obviously more risk tolerant, even though we are well established. It's still a risk and a perceived risk. So we have to take the market through the paces as far as that's concerned. And that is something that you need to be mindful of. So don't look at a global opportunity as something that is unified. Every market, it's got its own dynamics, and they pretty much look like this. Funding lessons, the last part of what I would like to share. So I've shown you the growth trajectory. So we did a lot of bootstrapping initially to get traction. And we were going to bootstrap this forever. But we then quickly realized that we can do so much more in the market, and we can grow faster if we have some funding. And then we got friends, family, and fools, and early angels to come along. So this is really how it goes. And we did have more established funder conversations initially, but because we're so early stage, even at this level here, where there was traction, we could show that the product works well, we could show people are willing to pay for it, and there's nice growth. Those more traditional funders, they need to de-risk and that's the VC space, because they're investing other people's money. So in order for them to do that, if they even go and look at you at that point, they will ask for a lot. So, and if your conversation then goes down to, we'll help you with X, but we will take 70% of your shares, which you can then claw back if you are successful. And that's a conversation that you're probably not going to conclude. At the same time, you need to learn from those. So angels are your best bet, especially initially. And there you are looking for mentors, well-networked people that will open doors for you, that will guide you strategically. And they're really super, super important that you find the right people. And only later on, only at this stage, are you going to sort of branch into the VC space. Also, you need to write a certain ticket for a VC to even consider having a conversation with you, because it's a lot of effort to go through a due diligence, and it's a lot of effort to make this all work for them, as it will be for you. So they're not going to waste their time to write a small ticket, and it has to be a certain size. Lastly, some more lessons along the road. So if you're starting out, 2 founders is great. As a single person, you're probably not going to make it. And if there's 5 of you, also not a good idea necessarily, because 5 people, there's a lot of dynamics, and also you need to think future. So if your business takes off and you have a number of funding rounds, eventually if you're starting at 20%, you'll be diluted down to 10 or single digits fairly soon, and that starts to hurt, even though the business value at that point hopefully is quite high, but you're just starting off a low base. So 2 founders, great, because you need to shoulder this together, and it's like a marriage, there's ups and downs. The next point is funders have options, they do, and funders, angel investors, VCs, they look at many opportunities every week, and that's their job. And it's a bit like dating. You have to find the right match. So many of them will say, no, that's not for us, or the market's too narrow, or we are very hot on fintech right now, and that's not something that we might look at. But that's fine, just learn. And very key is that you are 100% accountable, even if it's not going anywhere. Make those conversations count, because they all know other people. So your network that you're building is absolutely key. And ultimately, it also comes down to you understanding that you have options, because you might say no to a funder who's lining up and prefer another one. Because they're smarter money and they'll help you more down the road, or it's a better match. And again, it's a bit like a mix of dating versus applying for a job. So you need to find the right match, and it's a 2-way street. And if you are accountable, and if you say and do what you say you're going to do every single time, make sure that you take all of these conversations seriously, but also you're honest and you're truthful. You cannot pretend to be something that you're not. And these guys know that you don't have all the answers. These guys know that you are going to make mistakes, and that's fine. And they want to know how you're going to deal with it if that happens, because it'll happen. And so, yeah, be open to that, and don't rehearse, be authentic. And if you're not 100% convinced that it's going to work, and if you're not passionate about it, then why would they back you? And they'll know that too. And they've got enough conversations to figure out that the cream rises to the top. So yeah, I hope that you found that insightful. If you want to know more about how our system works, check us out online, tagmarshall.com. And good luck with the challenges over the coming weeks and months. It's going to be groundbreaking, change-making. Never waste a good crisis, they say, right? So all the best to you guys.
Hello, everyone. My name is Uwais Asmal, and I'm the Head of Advisory at Outsourced CFO. Our topic for today is navigating the term sheet. And I'd like to introduce you to our expert for the day, Sarah Lawrence, a legal consultant and advisor at Caveat Legal. Sarah, could you please give our delegates an introduction to your role and your experience?
Thanks so much, Uwais, and thanks for the opportunity to participate. It's lovely to be here. Yes, as Uwais has said, I'm a consultant on the Caveat Legal panel. I've got experience in commercial law, specifically mergers and acquisitions, private equity investments, and deals of that nature. And I've been in practice since 2010 now. So I've done a couple of deals.
You've got a bit of experience.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's great. So let's think about our delegates. As an entrepreneur going into an investment transaction, the first thing that an investor will give them is a term sheet. And for those who don't know or haven't done a deal yet, what is a term sheet?
A term sheet is essentially a summary of the basic terms of the deal that the entrepreneur would have been discussing with the investor to date. So usually, although the term sheet is the first physical document that the entrepreneur will receive from the investor, usually they've been chatting for a while already, and a lot of the terms of the deal would have been verbally thrashed out. And the purpose of the term sheet is effectively to consolidate the terms in writing, but at a fairly high level in a document. And although that document in itself is not sufficient to form the basis for the transaction in terms of a legal document, it will be used when it comes to the attorneys drafting the formal comprehensive agreements. So the content of a term sheet is quite important, because once you've settled that content, you'll go forward using that as the basis for the rest of the deal. And that's why getting to grips with the term sheet and making sure that it reflects the deal as both sides understand it is quite important.
Okay, so even though the term sheet is the first official legal item you get from an investor, there's a lot that happens before that.
Correct, yeah. And afterwards, yeah.
What are the key things to look for in term sheets for an entrepreneur to look out for?
So the most important thing when an entrepreneur receives a term sheet and starts to read it and come to grips with it is to make sure that it contains all the elements of the deal that you've been discussing with the investor to date, and that the elements that it does contain are a true reflection of what the entrepreneur understands the deal to be. Because, as I said earlier, it's going to inform the drafting of the comprehensive agreements later. So some of the key things that you'll typically see, or that you should definitely see in a term sheet, will be things like the amount of the proposed investment, the form that the investment will take, that's whether it's debt or whether it's equity, which I'll come to in a minute, and also the timing of the investment. Will all the money be injected upfront? Will you receive it in tranches over time? So those are the kind of things around the investment itself. If I just pause for a minute to talk about the form that the investment takes, so debt versus equity. Investments will generally either come in by way of a loan to the company, which is debt, or they will come in by way of what people refer to as equity. In other words, where the money that comes in is used to acquire shares in the company. The main difference between equity and debt is that if the company takes on investment by way of debt, the debt is ultimately repayable to the investor. And there will be a number of terms that are attached to that debt. For example, the repayment terms, whether it earns interest, when interest is payable, what the interest rate is, and so on. And all of that needs to be reflected in the term sheet at quite a high level. But what the entrepreneur needs to be sure of is that what they've previously discussed with the investor is what is in that document. Another thing to look out for with debt is most investors will want security for the debt. So you'll be looking at things like personal suretyships from the entrepreneurs, possibly, or pledges of shares in the company, or if the company has got assets, whether it's physical assets like equipment, or intangible assets like software or IP, the investor might want a pledge of the assets as security as well. So that's your debt investment. And then your equity investment, where the investor acquires shares in the company, is different, because the money that they put in for shares is not repayable. So once it's in, it's in. On the other hand, when they receive shares, they receive certain rights that attach to those shares. And usually those rights are economic, in the sense that if there's a profit, they'll be entitled to receive dividends. But also voting rights, so decision-making rights within the company. And there are a number of elements that go along with those. So those are your two forms of investment that the term sheet, it should distinguish between.
Okay,
then a couple of other, sorry, Wes, I just want to quickly finish up on that one. Another thing to look out for in a term sheet, which is linked to what I was just saying, is investor rights. Often investors will, whether they're investing by way of debt or by way of equity, they will want rights over and above what they would be entitled to just at a very basic level in law. And those rights could be things like decision-making powers at board level. They might want a seat on the board, for example. It could also be information rights, where they require the company to send monthly management accounts. They might require access at any time to the company's books of account, and maybe monthly updates with entrepreneurs to find out how the business is going. So those investor rights, you need to look out for those in a term sheet as well. There's nothing wrong with them as long as the entrepreneurs are prepared to give the rights of that nature.
Okay. See, you've mentioned it a bit briefly already, but what are the risks associated with signing a term sheet?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So term sheets, firstly, let me say, term sheets can go by a number of names. Sometimes they can be called a term sheet, a heads of agreement, a heads of terms, or a memorandum of agreement, even a memorandum of understanding. It's all the same document. The name isn't important. Some term sheets are legally binding, and it will say there that it's binding. Some of them are not binding, in which case it's more like a discussion document. And some of them, certain of the clauses will be binding and other clauses will be non-binding. But some of the risks associated with signing a term sheet, which is binding, is that if many term sheets will contain what's a clause around a break fee. So if the deal proceeds up to a certain point, and then for some reason it falls down as a result of acts on the side of the entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs or the company could become liable to pay what's known as a break fee, which is effectively a payment to compensate the investor for the time and the money that they've spent to date. So that's one of the key risks. It doesn't happen often that a break fee becomes payable, but it can happen. Another key risk with signing a term sheet is that, when you sign that document, because it's going to form the basis of your comprehensive agreements later, you need to be sure as an entrepreneur that what it contains, as I've said before, is the deal as you understand it. If there are elements of it that you're not sure about or that don't seem right, you need to question them up front. Because if you get further down the line with the investor to the point where they've got their attorneys drafting the comprehensives, and then you come and say, oh, but we never agreed to this and we know that wasn't what we thought, etc., you can engender quite a lot of frustration on the side of the investor, and the tone of the deal can be negatively affected.
Beware what you sign, basically.
Beware what you sign, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And tell me, are there any risks that pop up in a South African context specifically?
Beware is the only risk that comes to mind in a South African context specifically is sometimes investors, particularly if they are smaller investors or less experienced, will try to transplant an investment structure from another jurisdiction, for example, from the States, into a South African context. And because our law is different, it doesn't always transplant as seamlessly as you might think. So what I've got in mind in particular are the so-called simple agreement for future equity, or a SAFE agreement, which is very common now and it's being bandied about all over the show. There's nothing wrong with a SAFE agreement, but as I say, because it's been transplanted from another jurisdiction, sometimes the long-term consequences of a SAFE are a lot more complex than people foresee at the outset. So although the SAFE initially looks very simple and straightforward, it's a short document and it's easy to understand, and you implement it on day one and that's fine, but then there are longer term consequences down the line, which are actually a lot more complex than you would have foreseen, or the typical entrepreneur would necessarily have foreseen. So my advice there, if you are presented with a SAFE agreement, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing illegal or impossible to implement, but maybe consider taking advice as to what the long-term complications could be.
Sounds like you're talking about agreement that somebody pulls off Google, potentially.
Some of them are, not all of them, but yeah, you need to be careful of those, yeah.
Moving on to my next question, what are the things that an entrepreneur should proactively add to the terms sheet before they finalize that with an investor?
Sure. So entrepreneurs, when you sit down and engage with the term sheet, during the build up to the point where the term sheet is actually presented to you, the investor will probably have promised you, aside from the monetary investment, they might have promised you a whole lot of other stuff. For example, strategic support, business development support. They've got experience in growing small businesses. They can help you with this and that and the next thing. If they've made those kind of promises to you and they're important to the entrepreneur, then make sure that those obligations are in the term sheet. They need to be there. Your obligations as an entrepreneur need to be there, and theirs need to be there as well. So that's quite important. Bear in mind what they've promised you and make sure that it's in the document. Other things that you need to make sure are there is that there should be a confidentiality clause, because you as the entrepreneur are going to be sharing information about your business with the investor, and it's your confidential intellectual property essentially, and they need to undertake that they're going to keep it confidential. So make sure that there's a confidentiality clause which binds not only the entrepreneurs but also the investor. And then finally, there might be what's known as an exclusivity clause or a non-circumvention clause. This is effectively a clause which says, for as long as you, the entrepreneurs, are negotiating with us, the investor, you're not going to go running to other investors to try and get similar funding. You must negotiate with us, and only if this falls through can you approach other people. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly reasonable. But make sure that there's a time horizon to that clause, so that if the deal falls through, or if a certain amount of time has passed and nothing is happening, the entrepreneurs are released from that non-circumvention clause, and you can go and look for investments from other people.
Okay. And just my final question, what would your advice be to entrepreneurs who are looking to negotiate a term sheet?
I think my number one piece of advice would be, don't be scared to negotiate the terms. Don't be shy to negotiate with the investors. Make sure that when you read the term sheet, you understand every single clause in that document. If there is a clause that you're not clear on, that you're not fully, understand, get guidance either from an attorney of your own, or just go back to the investor and say, what does this clause mean? So that you can engage properly with the term sheet. And once you've got a full understanding of all the clauses, and there are things that you're not happy with, or you feel that it's not reflecting what you've discussed previously, don't be shy to go back to the investor and say, this isn't what we agreed. We'd like to change it to reflect the following, A, B, C. Having said that, and linked to that advice, is when you negotiate with the investor, although your business is extremely important to you as an entrepreneur, which is natural, avoid an emotional or a defensive or an entitled tone. If you're going to make comments in the document or during discussions, keep your tone professional, because investors will respect you more for engaging properly with the term sheet, but they will also respect you for having a professional approach. Which
sounds like small things that can make a big difference.
Yeah,
I would never, you wouldn't have thought about tone in an agreement, but that actually makes a lot of sense.
It
wow,
makes
okay.
a lot of sense. Yeah.
Thank you for answering. You've given me a lot of color, and I've learned quite a bit from all your questions. Basically, one of the things that also came out for me is there's no such thing as a gentleman's agreement. If you want to make sure everything you've agreed is in that term sheet. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everybody else for tuning in. We'll be moving on to the next item. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Avril van der Rede. I'm the CEO and founder of Eagle Towers. First of all, thank you, Lo and Okfo, for this opportunity to share my story with you guys. It's been a good ride, and I'd just like to maybe inspire a few of you guys, and also just share my war stories and give a bit of advice of how to prepare for raising funds or doing applications for funds and so on. First of all, Eagle Towers is a tower co-company like we describe them in the industry. The model is simple. We build and own cell phone towers, and we rent the tower space out to the likes of MNOs, mobile network operators, Vodacom, Cell C, MTN, Liquidtel, OpenServe, Rain, and so on. We also allow ISPs on our towers, internet service providers. A bit about myself, just to put you in context and give you some sort of idea of who the jockey of the horse is and the entrepreneur. I come from humble beginnings, a place called Jamestown, just outside Stellenbosch. It's a small agricultural old coloured town, as it was named. We were brought up very financially challenged. I always believe that you don't get poor people because you're only poor when you don't have any dreams. And Madiba also said in his days that a winner is a dreamer that never gives up. So if you don't have any dreams, how can you be a winner? When I opened my eyes, we planted strawberries. We had a coal stove, paraffin fridge, cleaned the dam, skitsy under the bed for the night. My bathroom was as big as a bowl. It was stored under my bed. We are 5 siblings, and we all got tertiary education, and we all got professional jobs. I'm the only idiot that started a business. I still got my parents. I'm very blessed to have them around, 76 and 77. They enjoy their 9 grandchildren. And so telling you that is not to get empathy from you at all. It's just basically just to give you some sort of idea of how character was built during those times of adversity, and we pushed through as a family, and me in my personal capacity. It was character building times. It was times of learning and sticking together, and I think that's one of the main reasons why we as a family are so closely knitted, and so on. So the idea for today is just to tell you of how Eagle Towers has come into being, and the background of me in particular. So I did my schooling, primary school and secondary school in Stellenbosch. Literally, we had our classes in the pine forest because there weren't enough classes for us. So we had a green board against a tree and sitting on tree stumps. And my secondary school was at Lukov Secondary in Stellenbosch, and Iris Valley in particular. I obtained my national diploma in construction management and quantity surveying during 93 till 95. And in 96, I obtained a bachelor's degree in construction management, and thereafter I did a project management course at University of Stellenbosch Business. During my in-service training, I started working at Granica already, and so I was at Granica for 6 years and got retrenched in 1999, leading towards 2000. I was involved in the raw construction industry, meaning that we did projects like the IMAX Theatre, BMW Pavilion, the Oudekraal Hotel, now the 12 Apostles, Swiss Re McCarthy Motors, Protea Place in Claremont, Cavendish Square, a 17-story building in Strand, the Goodwood Prison, 900 houses in Kimberley. So that is the raw construction industry, which I loved. I just didn't love the time that was spent on site. I mean, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week was a bit hectic for a person that wants to start a family. So in that time, I was retrenched in 1999, and then I started a job at Vodacom in 2000, where I was introduced to the telecommunications industry, in particular the cell phone industry. So I worked at Vodacom for 11 years. At the time, I was involving myself with a lot of other different departments within the operations group, meaning I worked for property management department, where I was responsible for building the network infrastructure and maintaining it, from negotiations, permitting, to building the site and maintaining it. But in that process, I made everybody else's business my business, like radio planning, transmission, switching, project management, and all those type of things. And so that gave me a set of skills that was great, in the sense of construction combined with telecommunications. Going into infrastructure building for the telecommunication industry was a good combination at the time. So in 2011, I got an opportunity to jump ship at Vodacom, and I joined the company, and where I was director and owner and 50% partnership. This was a company that was based on the discipline of project management. So we did project management back to Vodacom, building their sites, project management on behalf of them and so on. However, due to not a long story or bad mouthing anyone, is just the mere fact that I outgrew my partner at the time. We had different views. I had a more corporate growth type of mentality, where my partner was more leaning towards 60, not want to take on new challenges, do not want to grow, and I could respect that, and he obviously had to respect my views as well. So based on that, amongst other things, we decided to part ways in 2015. However, 2012 we started two more companies, meaning that we started a company that was more infrastructure related, towers, and the other company was more technical, leading towards connectivity, might it be wireless or fiber, but using the sister company as a platform to enhance the telecoms, the technical company. So it was an interlinking, one complementing the other one at that time. However, things became a bit unpleasant, and we decided to part ways by voluntarily liquidating the mother company that I joined in 2011. And 2015, we decided that I'd buy his shares out by giving 2 towers back to him that we inherited into that business. And on that side, I sold my shares literally for $100 just to get part ways. My partner at the time had the luxury of revenue in immediately. I took the option of no revenue in, meaning no salary for 10 months plus, and only leaning on a pipeline of a dream on a spreadsheet of site names, only having one site left in the portfolio. But we pushed through great adversity and challenges. And in 2016, February, we received our first funding from CISA after running through a whole due diligence process and red tape. We received the first tranche of money in the account on the 1st of March 2016. And in that time, I did a risky, I made a decision that was a bit risky, meaning that I've built 6 sites, I've negotiated with my contractors and suppliers to supply the sites, which is about R1 million each, with a view and faith that this whole thing will come through sooner than later. So on the 1st of March, 6 towers were standing. On the 1st of March, I got my first tranche of money. So the timing was perfect at the time. So apologies. So we built the sites and we built a track record with the funding that was provided at the time. And then in 2016, the same year, in June, we received another funding opportunity from another entity. Unwillingly, because I wasn't too keen on taking their money at the time, because the funds that we received at the time was enough to build a track record, and then under better circumstances, in the sense of having a better balance sheet to get cheaper funding. Because I didn't want to go into another funding round with the same type of interest charges, because that would kill the business. Unfortunately, I was forced into it and accepted it. During that time, which I'm not going to mention the follow-up funder, we weren't aligned. There was a few things that I did wrong. I'll put up my hand and say, well, I did something wrong, but there's a few things that I did not agree with that lead to a point where for 8 months we didn't build any towers, and that was detrimental to the company. However, in 2017, the company Merchants Investment Management came on board with pension funding as a backing funds, came on board and provide a potential buyout of the current funder that I actually don't want. With this came a 30% equity stake that they also took up. So they had a two-pronged type of investment into the business. So they are currently wearing 2 hats. One is a lender in conjunction with the CISA, and the other hat is being a shareholder in the business. At the time, it was great because we needed the injection, the capital injection into the business to assist with the vision that I have for the company. And the vision was to have a national footprint. Having a national footprint meaning that you need to have staff on a national level, but also that will lead to having towers, presence of towers on a national level, seeing that your clients are nationally based, that would be a perfect position to sit in. So that first injection of a capital investment into the business allowed for staff recruitment, resources, but also in our line of businesses, there's about 3 facets to the lifespan of a tower. It's the planning of it, getting all permits approvals, like civil aviation, environmental impact assessment, local authority approval, and you name it. We call that the permitting phase. The build phase is basically the capital that we need to build a site, and the process is much easier. And then also from a maintenance perspective, to look at the longevity of a site, looking after it in a sense of proper maintenance to prolong the lifespan of a tower. So that capital that was injected into the business in June 2017 came at the right time, and we did what we had to do. And today we're sitting with about 780 sites in permitting phase, 106 ready to build, and 65 sites that we've built. We could have done better on the build, but unfortunately there was a bit of a delay in the process due to our tenants that has got budgets that was earmarked for other projects, and the rollout on their side wasn't that great for the last 2018, latter part of 2018, and the whole 2019 was a difficult year. However, having said that, it's strange that we've got a portfolio of 50 sites, right? And in the last 2 months we built 15. So we built a portfolio of 50 sites over 4 years, 4 years plus, leading towards 5 years. And in the last 2 months we built 15. So that's the potential that we have as a company expanding this business to a greater entity. So yeah, we have done well. We can roughly estimate based on offers that we received recently per tower offers, that we can roughly say that we can value our business as just short of 200 million rand. And through the grace of God, obviously, and hard work, great team that I have on a national level, we've succeeded and we've come thus far. So that's the one part of my discussion with you guys today, is just to tell you the story of Eagle and where we come from, what we have gone through and where we are today. And but I also just want to take this opportunity to say that with no disrespect towards tertiary education, tertiary institutions, University of Life is key for me. I've learned a lot at CPUT when I did my degree, my national diploma and so on. But what I did right was, I've got a saying as the CEO of Eagle Towers: if you want to soar with eagles, don't hang around with turkeys. And it might come across as a joke, but it's a shocking reality that whoever is in your circle, whoever you allow in your circle, will either drag you down or make you stronger. So I've got this mentality that don't be arrogant. Get people in your circle that more witty than you, that's more experienced and more knowledgeable, to make you stronger. So I've got a lot of people that I lean on where I lack experience, in the form of Okfo. Lizanne Hubert has been an instrumental part of my life and the life of Eagle Towers, and learned a lot from her, from a legal perspective, from a business coach, from a life coach, from Angelo Manzoni, that's a COO in my business, amongst others. I'm learning from the sweeper in the office. So that's how you should portray your life, and that's how you should approach life, is that you are never too old to learn, or the source of learning can be anyone. So that is part of what made us successful as a business. Then I was asked to speak about core tips around raising funds and so on. So I would say by now, if I speak to anyone that needs funds, I can safely assume that the person has got a company already. But I just want to add a bit of value with regards to the structuring of your companies, plural, meaning that I would prefer, or my structures are currently, I've got a trust, it's a shareholding trust, that owns the shares in a company that is called a Zaya. A Zaya is more a div company, a Section 42 discipline registered in the business. And that company holds the shares of Eagle Group SA, and Eagle Group SA is a holding company of subsidiary companies, of which Eagle Towers is one of. The reason for that is basically just for personal protection. And the law allows you to go that route to save a bit of tax. So for you and your family, you can create a bit of wealth within the div company. And so that's the reason for that. So have somebody look at your structures of your business at an early stage so that it doesn't trigger capital gains tax in future. However, this Section 42 company, according to the advice that I got, we're still researching and investigating, doesn't trigger capital gains tax in the way it is structured in the tax law. Yeah, so I would say that getting yourself a mentor or a life coach is important as a business person to help you and guide you in and keep you accountable in certain aspects. Everybody's not in the same aspect, in the same way, similar discipline and so forth. So sometimes you need somebody on your shoulder saying, hello, don't do that or go do that. Design a proper business plan with accurate data, with SWOT analysis, capital required, indicate what capital is required in your business, indicate your model in which your business, in which sector your business will be operating in, what services you would render, might it be production, might it be a service. Show cash flow projections, show forecasts, indicate the anticipated margins in the business and by when your company will reach the upward curve of the hockey stick and when it will reach the break even, and or better, indicate when you anticipate your company should show profit. Also mention in your business plan expansion probabilities and then also do a proper market study of where you're going to deploy your service or your product. Do not be shy to ask for assistance. The bigger the pool of chances, the greater your success. With this quest of obtaining funds, there will be rejections. Just manage your rejections. The worst thing that can happen to you is you die. So nobody can kill you for asking anything. And if you are rejected, just go to the next one. Don't feel despondent. I've been rejected many times, and look who we are today. We're seen as a reputable company in the industry. I'm going to reiterate by saying that dream big. Don't put yourself back, or don't put yourself in the back line and say other people are better than you. You can become as good as they are. Learn from their mistakes and pursue your dreams. Lastly, I'd just like to thank Lo again for allowing me to share this story of Eagle Towers and the opportunity to just have a chat. I hope that I've reached at least one person, to inspire at least one person in the audience with my little story. And thank you very much once again. So good luck and Godspeed with our challenge that we have as a nation and and globally. It's a challenge with friends of ours right around the globe. Everybody's in lockdown, Germany, Australia, and so on. So for us in South Africa, it's a time for introspection, time with family. Use it well. This coronavirus will come and go. It will be beaten because we are still standing after all these years. A lot of things has come and gone in the history of the human race, and we've succeeded. But it's going to be discipline and obedience to the new rules that has been implemented. So Godspeed and good luck. God bless.
Thank you for joining us tonight for the first ever digital fundraising conference. My name is Leanne from Outsourced CFO, and I'm a practice manager. And tonight with me, I have Ian Lessam from Hawaii. Hello, Ian.
Hi there.
And I have Manuel Koza from Silvertree Holdings. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Okay, so thank you, gentlemen, for availing yourselves at such short notice for this digital conference, in spite of the circumstances of the COVID-19 that we find ourselves and the rest of the world in. The topic for discussion tonight will be, what do investors want? And I think both of you being in that space will be able to assist us with, we're looking forward to all the information that you have for us this evening. So I'll start with Ian. Can you please tell us what does your fund do? What deals do you target, and what is the mandate of your fund?
Yes, certainly. So thank you very much for having us. So at Havite, we invest in early stage, high growth local technology companies that have the potential to scale internationally. Internationally can be into other parts of Africa, it can be into Europe, it can be into the US, it can be into Asia. But we really look for young businesses that have at least some traction. So it can be 1 client, 2 clients, 3 clients. So we are quite early stage. That have technology and expertise that resonate both locally and internationally, and we look to partner with them and helping them to scale both locally, as I said, and into international markets.
Great. And Manuel, what sort of deals do you target, and what is the mandate of your fund?
Thanks, Leanne. So firstly, to clarify, we're not a fund, so we are a permanent capital base. Which means, we have a balance sheet that we invest off, which allows us to do a couple of things. One, we don't need to look for exit. Generally, we fund the business through the life cycle over time. So we can do seed, growth, and kind of buyout capital all at once. It also allows us to have a team, so a 25 people team that supports our kind of portfolio companies and fellow entrepreneurs, anything from legal, finance, recruiting, controlling, tech development across the line. So we get economies of scale and we get the experience curve, know how doing things a couple of times. We generally focus on South African companies, consumer brands and consumer internet companies, the kind of portfolio of 12 brands. And yeah, I want to scale them mostly in South Africa, but also with the potential to go international, and a very kind of entrepreneurial setup, and kind of very much focused on alignment of interest from top to bottom.
Interesting. Thank you. The venture capital landscape in South Africa, it is still very new and very young. And Ian, how do you see it right now? And what is your take on the venture capital landscape in South Africa?
Yeah, I think we're at a very exciting place in the VC journey. So, of course, people have been investing in young businesses for years. But it's only really in the last couple of years that we're seeing the rise of, let's say, more formal or traditional type of institutional investing in the space, which is great because the more capital that comes into the sector, the more chance it has of ultimately flourishing. So, you know, it is still early days. The base is low, but what you would know, I'm sure all the viewers would know, is the growth rates are kind of accelerating year on year. And I think also a pleasing trend is particularly in the last couple of years, we're seeing a drastic increase in foreign investors in this space, where they quite pleasingly look to partner with local investors such as ourselves. So often what we find is that we come in quite early, we work with the businesses, get them what many would deem, let's say, Series A ready, and then as we have to scale into other markets, we partner with international investors. So for our portfolio companies, for instance, we've got really, really large, well-known VCs from Japan, from the US, from Europe, who are partnering with us in subsequent funding rounds, which is not something you saw very often a few years ago, and I think it's a great sign of things to come.
Correct. You're right to say that there are a lot of investors that are coming from Europe and America to come into South Africa. Manuel, you yourself are not, you're from Germany, and why have you picked South Africa instead of investing anywhere else in the world?
Yeah, good question. I get this asked a lot from my friends.
Do you?
It's not the obvious choice, but for me, it was actually the obvious choice because it's the probably most amazing place on earth to live. Exciting landscape, weather-wise, it's very different to cold Germany I'm from.
Oh yeah.
And I think there are very interesting pockets of growth and pockets of excellence. The VC space was very, very young when I moved down 9 years ago to start my first entrepreneurial business. And we subsequently saw how difficult it is to raise capital, how little support there was 9 years ago, and obviously subsequently has grown a lot and developed a lot this way. We said, cool, we have now a lot of learning, we have a little bit of capital, let's invest this into and create opportunities wherever we can, because we believe long-term, these trends you see, consumers moving from offline to online, the millennial consumer caring about craft, caring about sustainability. This is a global trend, not an isolated trend. So we can almost like look a little bit in the future and catch these trends and kind of make sure we can prove a business from beginning to end, because this entrepreneurial journey is very hard, and you want partners by your side that can help you weather the storm.
Okay, interesting. The question that is probably on everybody's mind and on my mind as well is, Ian, what does a successful deal look like? I mean, what do you look like? What do you look for? What do you look for in a transaction?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. I mean, almost building on why South Africa, why Cape Town, and it does apply to other African markets, which we also invest into, is that often we don't give ourselves enough credit for some of them, and Manuel spoke about some of the excellence that we have here. So, you know, for instance, Cape Town, people say, why Cape Town? So in Cape Town, there are more devs sitting in Cape Town than every other city in Africa, except for Johannesburg combined. So there's, you know, massive talent. You know, why does Amazon Web Service have, I think, the third biggest office, I could be, you know, third or fourth biggest office in the world, sitting in Cape Town? Again, because we've got great talent. Why was Amazon Web Service actually launched from Cape Town? Because we have great talent. So often we don't give ourselves enough credit for some of the amazing, you know, people that we have here.
Absolutely.
But I was just sort of building on that question, but coming to the question you just asked, I mean, for us, it's all about investing in local skills where we have a right to play, and we have something that, from a technology point of view, is both interesting in South Africa or in East Africa, for instance, in Kenya, for instance, or in Tanzania, or even Nigeria, that can enter other markets. And we like businesses that are tech-enabled and the technology allows them to scale. So I've got to be careful because we have 12 portfolio companies. I think I can only pick one for the purpose of this. So if any of the others are listening and I didn't pick you, we love you very much. But it's just a nice topical example because it's our most recent investment. Is in December last year, we invested in a health tech business specializing in audiology technology called Hearix. It is quite a well-known business locally. But taking a step back, so we have 3 health tech investments, Hearix, Recomed, and Vuna Mobile. And why health tech? So as many of you know, we're some of the best doctors in the world. Many international doctors actually come and do the internships here, particularly in the emergency services space, because, you know, the realities of South Africa is we do have under-resourced government hospitals, but we have a demand, you know, from patients to use them. So if you can thrive or survive in that environment, you can pretty much work anywhere in the world, and that's the basic thesis there. So health tech, great doctors, great experience, etc., great skills. In the medical space. So that's kind of why health tech. Why Hearix in particular is it's a great example. So many years ago, a professor of audiology, which for those who don't know, audiology is effectively the study of hearing and hearing loss and all those types of things. He effectively invented a way to combine all this massive old school machinery that sits in an audiologist practice, so big kind of Siemens machines that test your ears, into an app on your cell phone and a few, you know, bits of hardware that sits in standard earphones. And that in itself was quite amazing. That product was rolled out into over 30 countries. But as you can imagine, audiology is very specialist, it's very niche, and you're also competing against, as I said, the likes of the Siemens. You have massive market. If someone's gone and bought large equipment, they're not going to go and get rid of that. They're going to keep it until basically it's, you know, no longer works. So these guys, they realized early on that they needed to use their incredible technology to find solutions that don't exist in the world. So they came up with quite a few. The one that I'll sort of use as an example is they effectively have technology that specializes in preventative hearing loss. So premature or hearing loss that should otherwise not have happened is growing globally at an exponential rate, simply because people are listening to music or watching TV or whatever it may be in a way that it's damaging their ears and it's causing them to go deaf, which is a massive issue. So their technology, it sits in your mobile phone, it sits in your earphones, and it basically regulates what you're listening to, and it will auto-program and correct it so that you don't damage your ears. So if you imagine as a parent, it's quite useful. So I've got 3 little kids. Probably I put on the earphones so that I don't necessarily have them and I damage my own ears, but that's not the example. So you know that what they're listening to is safe.
Yeah.
Long story, but I'll get to the crux of it. So great technology, great use case, local right to play. And now we talk about the internationalization of the business. So when we invested alongside Bose Ventures. So Bose Ventures is the venture capital arm of Bose, being, you know, the household name sound company. So they make speakers, earphones, etc., etc. And very few people know that Bose is actually owned by MIT, one of the probably preeminent research universities, technology research universities in the world. And a prerequisite for them to invest was they had to go to their 4,000 engineers and say, listen, can you guys copy this technology? And the engineers basically said, look, we can, but it's going to take us a couple of years and it's going to cost us, you know, I'll just exaggerate and say billions and trillions, but obviously a lot of money. Rather invest with them and or into them and look to partner with them. And that's exactly what they did. And subsequent to that, so let's say in parallel to that, the company was launching a few of their products. I won't go into all the detail in the US, but having a Bose on the cap table as a significant shareholder has certainly helped to accelerate that. So again, the thesis, invest local talent, right to play, and then find partners to work with to internationalize that business. And ultimately for us, it's very much around the international exit. So we look for businesses like that. I think that hopefully answers that question.
Yeah, that is fine. Thank you. I think from your example, we can really see that the tech industry, online businesses, e-businesses are thriving in this kind of space that we find ourselves in the 21st century. Manuel, what do you see the industry going? And what do you see as the upsides or possible downsides of this industry?
So if you take a million steps back, why do you want to shop online, right? This thing we all carry in our pockets is a more efficient way to communicate than going to a store, for instance, or going to a bank branch. So the reason you've seen this big uptake in music streaming or kind of e-commerce shopping is because of that. It's fundamentally a better channel. But what it doesn't solve for is just the channel, right? So you still need to solve a consumer problem better than the next best alternative, and you need to do it significantly better. So in the South African case, it's very, very unique. We currently, from an e-commerce penetration perspective, sit somewhere around 2%. If you look in kind of the US or China or Europe, you're anywhere between 13, 14, and 22%. So you can look a little bit into the future where this trend will go. But obviously, countries are not comparable. South Africa is very different. So in the South African case, the interesting piece is that the offline players are very, very strong. Retailers are incredibly strong in this space, banks, insurers, and not only on a South African or African case, even on a global scale. So in order to win, you need to solve a very niche problem significantly better than Woolies can do in food. So we backed YouCook very early on, and despite Woolies going into the space, Pick n Pays and Checkers and copying this concept of meal delivery kit, because they went all the way into the vertical and defined the business mission around it and could think about quick adaptation when there was water shortage or power shortage, design the recipes around it, could work with a lot of local suppliers that probably would never ever pass Woolies procurement process because it's very stringent, but you're supporting a township farmer that gives back to society. you can build a whole story around this and craftsmanship rather than just being this big corporate that no one can relate to. So I think long term this is going to go there. The question how quickly it will be that get there is dependent on how many entrepreneurs build exciting businesses in that space.
Definitely. And a lot of our entrepreneurs are really entering the market and, you know, coming up with impressive ideas. Havag recently expanded its funds. Ian, how are you going to ramp up your investment activities? I mean, in the next while, what can entrepreneurs do to get your attention?
So, I mean, it's very much around being able to exhibit, you know, some of the things that I mentioned. Are you technology enabled? Do you have a right to play in that space? What markets can you enter into? But a big part is also around management itself. So because we are a very early stage investor, we like businesses where management have the majority stake of the business. And we take a big view on management themselves. So, you know, what experience do you have in the space? As I said, what rights do you have in the space? How do you behave? What clients do you have networks with? Where do you need help? That type of thing. Those are kind of the softer things we look at. I mean, I guess the big thing is raising money, and I think we'll touch a little bit on this later. Often people think it's a quick road to success. So first of all, any you know, what they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I often mix up metaphors, so if I got it wrong, I apologize. But effectively, you know, you want a VC who takes his time to get to know you, gets to know your business, but actually importantly, you want an investor who you know and you understand their qualities and can they add value. So patience is key. Businesses are not built in a day. Things always take longer than you think, and they still take even longer than that. So you need to be patient. You need to be, I suppose, thick-skinned in many ways, and keep your eye on the prize at the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, we the one thing just worth touching on is we just see those type of qualities coming out more and more and more. And I'm sure Manuel will reiterate or reinforce that idea is that this entrepreneurial spirit, but this mature entrepreneurial spirit is really starting to come to the fore in South Africa and in other parts of Africa, as I mentioned, East Africa, West Africa. And that really is super exciting.
Manuel, what are the critical things that you want to see in an entrepreneur before you even begin to say, look, we're going to invest or to consider investing in the company?
Yeah, people first. Tenacity is probably the biggest point for me. This is going to be roller coaster. It's going to be high highs, super lows. You will doubt that this was a good idea. You will ignorance is a little bit bliss, but if I would have known back then when I started my entrepreneurial journey now, I wouldn't have not done it because it's freaking crazy and it's very, very hard. And there are a lot of easier ways to kind of make a living, and but it's exciting and you learn a lot. So tenacity is incredibly important. I think probably point number 2 is passion. The reason I left my first business is because I don't really care about fashion at all. I'm not a person who's going to run a fashion e-commerce business for the rest of my life. And you see that, right? The founding part was exciting, building up a business, solving a problem, and everything that comes with it. And you need to be passionate. And I think if I look at our winning teams, the core indicators are those 2, is tenacity and passion. It's not necessarily who had the smartest and best grades or who worked at what corporate. It's way more complicated than that. And I think tenacity, passion are key. And then obviously business model, we like high margin business models and kind of clear differentiators that can last, and you can build kind of some sort of competitive mold around. And not just, hey, I read TechCrunch, someone is doing this in the US, let's copy paste into South Africa, with no passion, with no downside risk in terms of personal salary or personal money invested. So normally if you see tenacity and passion, you see alignment of interest, they've risked their house low salary paid, big time and cash investment, and not just I want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg and I'm going to copy something that might not make sense in a South African context.
Interesting. Okay, so Ian, could you give a few tips maybe for entrepreneurs who want to proactively build their company to be funding ready?
Yeah, so look, I mean, funding is many things. So you've got angel and seed funding, and then you've got, which I'd call the softer, friendlier funding. So in order to be angel and seed ready, I think you have to have a lot of qualities up front. And Manuel mentioned, no one's going to invest in you if you don't have those, if you don't have the tenacity, the passion, the expertise, etc. So funding ready at that stage is probably more of an emotional thing than anything else, I guess, or a softer thing at least. But when you start to look for institutional funding, of which VCs typically your earlier institutional funding, you need to understand, and this is often missed, is that you are taking investment from someone who is not sitting in your business. And why that's very important is, if I'm sitting in your business day to day, so you may be strategically involved, we typically sit on board seats, we have an advisory arm that helps the businesses, etc. And Manuel's business, I think, is a bit different. I think they are a little bit more hands-on than most. But basically, you have to give a return to someone who isn't day-to-day making more money in your business. So what you have to understand is, although a business can make you a lot of money, you in the business, can it make someone who's not in the business a lot of money? And that's often missed. So there's a big difference between paying yourself a high salary and returning profit to a shareholder. And that I often feel is missed. So, you know, I guess that's the first question entrepreneurs should ask themselves. Are they in a position where they can return profit to someone who's not going to be actually adding day-to-day value, i.e. not making money in the business? The second thing is around your let's say, corporate setup. So of course, any investor or any formal investor, they want to see reporting, they want controls, they want to know that you're on top of things, right? So there's a big difference between, I started a business with my best friend, I trust him or her implicitly, you do what you want with the credit card, I'll do what I want with the credit card, you hire who you want, you spend what you want, right? I trust you. Third party investor, yes, and I trust you, please can you just show me the proof? So if you are not set up, i.e. you don't have the right accounting structures in place, you don't have the right legal framework in place, do not expect an investor or a traditional or institutional investor to take you too seriously. And then the third thing is the vision. Again, you know, our game is very much around profit at exit. So what is the vision of the business? How are you going to actually return capital to an outside shareholder? Because I don't want to invest in a business. So again, Manuel's business will be a bit different, but I don't want to invest in a business in perpetuity and hope one day my children inherit it. I want to invest in a business that I'm going to exit in 5, 7, maybe 10 years time. How am I going to do that? And understanding how you build it. It doesn't just happen. You know, sometimes people get lucky, but more than not, you have to plan meticulously and hope you also get lucky along the way.
Yeah.
So you need that, let's say, limited foresight to plan ahead and say, well, how am I as an entrepreneur going to ultimately make money from this venture? If your goal in life is to make money from the venture, you often do things, you know, for other reasons, which is also fine. But certainly a for-profit capitalistic investor such as a traditional VC, while they hope they do good along the way, they're there to ultimately make money and return profits to their investors. So all of these things are super important considerations.
Thank you so much. The last question is for you, Ian. Manuel, sorry about that. The last question is for you, Manuel, and it says, what do businesses need to change? I mean, in light of COVID-19, which is a very critical, and we're at a very crucial stage where we find ourselves in South Africa and in the rest of the world. What do businesses need to do or change in their fundraising strategy at the moment?
Look, I think it's a quite important question because I think we're coming out of the longest bull market in history of 11 years. Money was fairly easy. Borrowing money was very easy. I think you had a huge tech boom. The reality is money sources will dry up. So the first kind of asset class that money will be drawn out of is private, high-risk emerging market kind of asset class. So that doesn't mean there's no capital, and it shouldn't be kind of holding you back. But and if you look back in history, some of the best companies got started during the midst of the crisis. The most profitable one, because suddenly now we need to accept and fully embrace that the rules of the games have changed. You can't just put together a quick PowerPoint presentation and run around to all kind of 20, 30 sources of capital. Generally, the hurdle, and I think Ian mentioned a lot of these points earlier, to get funding ready as an entrepreneur will be a lot higher. Because suddenly, instead of 20, 30 people looking at the space, it'll be 10 or it'll be 5. And the hurdle in terms of the last 11 years, it was driven by revenue growth and evaporated into crazy decisions like the WeWork debacle. It'll go from revenue now to profits, and it goes back to a funding model that I can explain to my grandmother, because in the olden days, what you did, you went to the bank, you borrowed some money against your name, you started a business that made profits to pay back the loan, and that's your proof if you have a business or not, is profits at some stage. So the VC is there, or like venture capital is there to kind of accelerate you in terms of growing and bridge this gap. But I feel we veered off a bit and it got a little bit crazy. So I think if you have a good idea and if you're a strong entrepreneur, you're passionate and tenacious about what you do, go ahead. There will always be sources, either on the angel side or on the VC side, that will want to back you. But just realize it'll be a lot tougher and the terms will be different than 2 or 3 months ago. And you double check that you're really, really happy that you will want to spend the next 7 years of your life on this topic, because that's at least how long it's going to take.
Sure. Okay, Ian, any last thoughts?
So I mean, we mustn't forget that in any crisis, an opportunity or many opportunities present themselves. So the world has changed and is changing very, very quickly. And of course, capital is going to become more scarce, but how entrepreneurs respond to this is quite key. So, you know, the nice thing about being a small business is you can be nimble, versus a big corporate. It's quite difficult for a big corporate of 1,000, 2,000, 40,000 people to respond and adapt is challenging. If you're a small business of 2 to 15 people, you can do things quite differently. So what we're actually seeing in some of our portfolio companies, well, first of all, because they're all technology based, and most of their infrastructure is, you know, in the cloud, supported by decentralized servers, they are able to decentralize or virtualize. I don't know if that's a real word. If it's a real word, I'll use it. It's not, I apologize. The offices. Yeah, we'll start a new one. So they can, you know, they can work remotely, which means there's a lot of business continuity. But even more so, there are services that will become high demand services. So, for example, effective communication channels, businesses that can deliver effective communication, particularly in the rural areas, and that can be two-way. That can be from a treatment point of view, that can be from a notification point of view, can thrive. Payments. All of us at this stage are very cognizant that as your sort of social distancing levels locally increase, your one point of risk, I suppose, is through payments. So then, is there a future where there's true, you know, contactless payment? That is where we're going, but is this going to accelerate that? If you have technology that helps to accelerate this may be a great time for you to flourish. Emergency services, your ability to access emergency services through non-physical means, i.e. not using your cell phone or not having to flag someone down, whatever it may be. You know, these are obviously, there's millions and millions of examples, but while capital may be scarce, those who really apply their minds can potentially, and I don't want to say capitalize on crisis because that's horrible, but certainly can look for a way to respond and positively impact not only their own business but those around them.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for availing yourselves to be able to be a part of this digital fundraising conference. I'm going to thank the audience for being with us this evening, and I will be closing off, and Lo will be closing with remarks. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
Okay, everyone, and that's a wrap. There you have it. I hope everyone is still awake and with us. I hope you've enjoyed a little drink and a bite on the back end while we've taken in all of this exciting content. Sure, so we've heard from some top entrepreneurs who did their experience shares on what their fundraising journey has looked like. We've heard from some top venture capitalists and investors to just kind of figure out what are investors really looking for. And we've also heard from some professionals giving some shares in terms of how they help navigate the complexities of fundraise for entrepreneurs. So these are quite extraordinary times. If you guys are looking at taking your own company through a fundraise process in this next while, you now know who to go to for experience shares, who to go to for some input in terms of how you can tackle that process. The Outsourced CFO team in the next while will be we've got 22 companies in our new intake for the Investec Finance Readiness program. So we will be helping these 22 companies prep for fundraising in the next while with quite an ambitious fundraising target set for the bunch of entrepreneurs. If you've missed the applications for that, don't worry, there will be another cohort in not too many months time, so do keep an eye out for that. If you want to privately undertake the process of raising finance, do have a chat with us and let's figure out how we can make it work to help you guys access the right type of capital at the right time for your business. Just again, to our speakers, thank you very much for all of your shares. To our sponsors, thank you so much for making this night possible. We couldn't have done it without you guys. And to everyone who's given their time tonight, I hope this was insightful. Please do give us feedback. Like I said, we'll circulate the correct platforms for any questions or any input that you guys would like to give, so we can gather all of that, and then we can keep making these events better as we go in this new normal of fully digital events. It's great to bring the ecosystem together. It's an absolute privilege for us as Outsourced CFO and for the team at Founders Events to just be able to connect with you guys, even though we can't see you in person. Do stay safe out there. It's probably gonna get worse before it gets better. We're thinking of all of you guys. All the best with your companies and with your endeavors in this trying time. We look forward to connecting with you very soon.